the report. And I was a member of that committee, and it made about 38 recommendations. And some of the key recommendations, particularly around eligibility, safeguards, special training for doctors, oversight in relation to a review committee, and assessment for capacity in terms of those that want to avail of assisted dying. So this is the legal framework for assisted dying and how it could actually work in Ireland. So it's an important piece of legislation, and it continues, I suppose, the recommendations from the Joint Committee. On 2020, I introduced the Dignity and Dying Bill. It went to second stage, and as a report, there was a clear majority in support of the recommendations. So this is a huge milestone in terms of this issue. So the next part of, I suppose, the progress of this is legislation. In opposition, we have put this bill forward, and hopefully in the lifetime of this government, the government will adopt this bill. It's possible that they could adopt it and legislate for it in the time of this government. So I think there's public support out there. In all kind of polls have indicated that there is a clear support in changing legislation around assisted dying, and it's a very important issue for a lot of people in terms of if they ever want to be in, if they're ever in that situation, would they actually want to avail of assisted dying? I think the fundamental kind of question we ask is that people should have a choice in terms if they're in that situation. Most people will never want to choose assisted dying, but there should be a choice in terms of end-of-life care and so forth. So we have 3 speakers. They're going to introduce themselves over the next course of 10 minutes. So the first speaker is John Wall.
Hi, my name is John Wall, and I suppose what brings me to the table is that I'm living with stage 4 cancer diagnosis, and I support the principle of assisted dying. And in that guise, I'd just like to thank Gino for the immense amount of work to get us to this point, and indeed this bill, which takes into account the recommendations from the Joint Committee. I'm saying that the recommendations from it, the 38 recommendations, speaks volumes as to how Ireland has progressed in terms of the national conversation, because the support for the principle of assisted dying is immense, and I believe, if not implemented beforehand, will certainly become an electoral issue over the next 12 months. The people that I've spoken to across all age groups bar none are broadly fully supportive of the implementation of legislation which will allow for assisted dying, given the guidelines and the revamped bill that Gino is introducing today, that will invariably assist in implementation. I've come across far too many people that have needlessly suffered despite the best intervention of palliative care services in this country, and we have phenomenal palliative care services. I have nothing but good things to say about them and the organisation and the work that they do, but sometimes, despite their best efforts, people suffer, and that's something that I'm passionately supportive of in terms of the avoidance of such suffering where possible and where appropriate. And I think it's an important part of the discussion as well to let people know that it's a very simplistic approach in terms of explanation, but this bill provides for the right to apply for something, and that application will subsequently be vetted by appropriately qualified healthcare professionals. And the safeguards that are in place for a reason, and that needs to be understood by some of the commentators who may be, shall we say, opposed to the principle. Some of the commentary is not fully reflective of what Gino and what Tom and what Jenny and indeed all politicians in Dáil Éireann are trying to do. And I say all politicians because there's cross-party support for this, and that's reflective of the support right across the island of Ireland for what we're trying to achieve. So I think it's really important that our legislators look at this new bill that has taken into account the recommendations from the committee, and it's certainly something that could be implemented within the lifetime of this current government. It's a debate and discussion that needs to be continued within the lifetime of this government. Otherwise, we have recommendations from the committee that basically gather dust on a shelf, and it's a waste of public resources, it's a waste of time, it's a waste of the committee's significant amount of time that they put into it if this conversation is not continued to a point that I guess we're taking it seriously and ultimately hoping to achieve what we never thought possible a few short years ago.
Thanks, John. Tom, would you like to say a few words?
I would, but I find it difficult to know what to say that I haven't said before. It's something that I've been speaking about for quite some time now. In fact, I suppose it's 15 years or maybe 16 years since it first became public that my partner, Mary Fleming, wanted the option. It was only an option that she was looking for, not there was no certainty to it. And that's the thing of that with most people that I come across. It's like insurance, that they want this option to be there for when or if they do decide to even look at that option from a serious point of view. That 15 years, things have changed dramatically in Ireland. During that time when it became public, in fact, it was due to a headline in a newspaper because of an end-of-life meeting that we had here in Dublin, that in fact was booked to be here in Boswell's Hotel, and 3 days before the meeting was due to happen, Boswell's cancelled on us. So, I mean, we hold, well, a record, I suppose, of being only they've only cancelled 2 other people, and one was an American anti-Holocaust person. So I don't think we want to be in the same category as that, but that's neither here nor there. So we found a collective up off Mountjoy Square, and we had the meeting there. And as a result of that, there was a paper headline saying that I will kill my wife. And that's how this whole thing became public in Ireland, our situation. But since then, as I say, things have changed dramatically. I got lots of abuse at that time, a police investigation into it, but now I'm getting nothing but support. It's an incredible change, brought about, I think, to a great extent by Mary herself, because then people didn't understand what this was all about. It was that it was something that I had never come across when Mary said it to me before, although I've been an activist in all sorts of things. I was one of the very first members of the Dublin Housing Action Committee back in the 60s, 70s, when we occupied buildings because of a housing crisis, believe it or not. And things haven't changed an awful lot since then. We used to break into empty buildings and reconnect. One of my jobs was to reconnect the electricity in them. But that's neither here nor there. But so, as I say, I've been involved in various things, and then got involved in the MS and now this as well, and also cannabis as a medicine. It was by far the best medicine that Mary had. But this, as I say, this situation has changed dramatically. And I suppose giving it the publicity has also made other people give some thought to it. Now, whether people would regard that as a bad thing or a good thing, I don't know. The unfortunate thing is that people are still taking that option. For instance, the travel to Switzerland hasn't diminished. It's going. Even I know one person travelling. Well, they've travelled to the UK for a fortnight, so that they will travel from the UK rather than here, to make it look very different. But they're travelling next week. I know 3 other people that have travelled from Ireland already this year, and I know of 8, and that's only the people that I would know that have made contact with me. The other situation that I suppose not an awful lot of people are aware of is that just at the middle of last year, I'll backtrack a little bit, that with people taking the situation into their own hands and preparing for the future, just like we did, people were accessing the drugs to put away for their future. As I say, like we brought our drugs in from Mexico. Those lines the availability of the drugs that are available have, I suppose, closed to a great extent. So they're becoming very difficult to get, and there are scam sites all over the place. But a Canadian guy called Ken decided that he got access to some of these drugs, and he decided, out of the goodness of his heart, that he would provide them to people at the cost at which he got them. And this was advertised around the world. And Ken was selling these drugs for practically, as I say, very little, with making no money out of it. And he was reported by the Americans. And the Canadian authorities went in to Ken and arrested Ken, and he's now charged. He hasn't been tried yet, but he's charged with murder, attempted murder, and assisted suicide. But the amazing thing about it was that when they checked his records, he had already dispatched 50 of these packages to Ireland. And there were nearly 200 people on his list of people that had contacted him from Ireland. Now, the guards followed up on a lot of them, and they made inquiries to me through about it as well. But 50 people had already bought this substance from Ken. And that gives you an idea of the number of people that want this option and are prepared to break the law, just like we did, to plan for the future. So it's about time that people got off their arse over across the road and did something about it. And I'm sorry for using that word, but I've been around this block for so long. I'm so grateful that finally that the committee was set up. It was 10 years ago, coming up to 11 years ago, that the Supreme Court sent it back to the Oireachtas to do something about this. And it took 11 years for them to do something. This is the third bill that's been put forward. The first one was by John Hannigan. The second one was by Gino, and this one by Gino now. And we're still no further on. Well, we are, I suppose. The committee has been set up. But it is only a recommendation. And while I'm not being pessimistic, I'm being realistic. Are they going to do anything about it? Because I think we still have to fight for that to happen. But while it's happening, there are lots of people out there who want this option. And it's not in conflict with medical science or with that sort of thing. People just decide that when things have got so difficult for them, life is not worth living. And that's an option that it's nothing to do with medicine. That's an option they should have. And it's not necessarily an option that the medical profession should be involved in at all. In fact, in some countries around the world, the medical profession is not involved. And I see no reason why a person should have to get permission to end their life. In 1993, we changed the law here on suicide. We decriminalised suicide. And it was established in the High Court. We had to establish it because one of the bases on which we took the case in the High Court was on discrimination. That Mary's illness was discriminating against her being able to access something which was legally available to people, to other people, to able-bodied people. So we had to establish that that gave a person a legal right to end their own life. And the Supreme Court, or the High Court, went off and deliberated on that, and they decided that it did. And that discriminatory aspect of our case was upheld by the High Court and the Supreme Court, that married or disabled people were being discriminated against if their illness prevented them from doing something which was available to an able-bodied person. So, I mean, that's, 12 years ago now. And still, people are having to get assistance. But it's, as I say, it's not a medical issue. Dying has never been a medical issue. Dying was never. People have been dying since they started living. Everybody dies. It's not something we have any choice about. It's how we die that these people want a choice on. They don't want to live in difficult circumstances and see the people around them suffering. Which again, as I say, that was Mary's thing as well. It wasn't just for Mary. It was for the people around her. And I think I've spoken enough.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks very much. Jenny, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Gina. And I'd like to thank Gina, you and all of the others on the committee who have put so much work into this. It's been a long journey, 9 months of intensive meetings. Having attended each of them, I can attest to that. It's not an easy topic to address. Everything has really been covered by John and Tom. I'd like to come at it from a completely different angle, in that End of Life Ireland represents the lived experience. I know, John, obviously you do as well, but I get phone calls every day from people who are living with either a terminal diagnosis or a neurodegenerative condition, or something that doesn't actually have a prognosis, but is a very much a life-limiting condition. People are asking me how and what they can do, where they can go. Our remit is to pursue legislation. But the stories are harrowing. They really are. The press will remember the story of Brendan Clark last year. Brendan had motor neuron and wanted his voice to be heard, and we will make sure his voice continues to be heard. What people underestimate is the impact, the lasting impact of a bad death. But also I'd like to focus in on the importance of choice. Gaynor French, who is somebody who greatly inspired us, she was 48 when she died. She had breast cancer, and it went into her bones. Gaynor said, if I knew I could choose when to die, I could go on living. I could concentrate on living. And that's what this legislation does. It gives somebody peace of mind so that they can focus on living as well as they can while they can. It also means that they have peace of mind knowing it's there, but their quality of life has been shown to improve knowing that the choice is there. Not everyone exerts that choice, but once they are approved, they know it is there, and that's vitally important. The safeguards in other countries work. They work. And we've researched extensively. We also have many experts coming to Ireland in September. There'll be a global conference, the World Right to Die conference, will be held in Dunleary. Anybody who is unsure of that in the medical profession, I would urge them to come, to listen, to learn, to collaboratively learn. I'll just conclude. Dying people do not have time to wait or waste. It's time to legislate. It really is.
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks very much. Okay, is there any questions from journalists here today?